welcome to another Pastor's Chat
Hey,
with
good to
Coley
see
and
you.
Tonks. Good to be here.
Always good to be back
That's right.
every week
That's it.
for Pastor's Chat.
Highlight of the week. Hope you've been enjoying it. If you've got ideas for things we should talk about, let us know, by the way.
Yeah,
Let us
because
know
we're
some
kind
the
of
things.
starting to run a little dry, aren't we, on
Well,
ideas? So
you could say that.
come on, give us your ideas.
Yeah, let us know what you'd love us to talk about. What are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about changes that we've seen happen in the church over years.
Wow.
You know, like I've been in, obviously I'm 50. I've been coming to church ever since I was a little kid. I've seen lots of changes over the years. A few different churches I've been a part of. Obviously a little bit less, but you've been 30 years in the church.
That's right.
It'd be great to hear after we've shared from some of our members, because some of you have been in even this church for 60, 70, even 80 years.
That's right.
So
Long
it'd be
time.
great to hear about
Love
other
to hear the
changes
comments.
we've seen.
What are the big changes? Because just between me and Tonks will be a lot, and then who's that next generation ahead of Tonks? And
That's right, yeah.
It's a lot of change nowadays, but we'd love to see what those changes have been. Like, I know you don't see puppets at church anymore, do you?
That's a
Never
good
think of that
change.
one. I think that's a terrible change. Love the puppets, but yeah, you won't see puppets. But
No.
yeah. But what are your main ones?
Yeah, so a few different things we're going to touch on today. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was I've seen, I think there's a real positive thing, is women being enabled to be more involved in key areas of ministry and leadership within the church. I grew up in Ballarat, as most of you are aware, went to the York Street Church of Christ, great church, but for a long, long time, a very, very conservative church. And so women in the church, particularly when I was a little kid, taught Sunday school, did the women's Bible study group. They were always allowed to do the church luncheons.
Hope so.
A real favourite.
Would have been a terrible luncheon
But-
otherwise.
You'd never have a woman lead in worship, or what used to be called the president back in the
Right.
days. Never a woman. You didn't have women do the Bible readings.
Wow.
Definitely didn't have a woman preach. And there was no women on any area of leadership, like key leadership such as elders or deacons. And the church used to take very hard line because, in the qualifications of an eldership that Paul shares, he says about that an elder must be the husband of one wife. And we had an AGM where someone had asked about women in eldership. Someone said about it has to be a husband of one wife. A woman cannot be a husband. And I spoke up and said, well, do you think perhaps what Paul's talking about is more about marital faithfulness rather than defining the actual sex? Well, World War III broke out and went on for about an hour's debate.
Oh, it sounds entertaining.
So I love now that women have a far more freer way of being involved. And this church actually led the way. I think I got told a number of years ago that we were one of the very first churches of Christ in all of Victoria to have a female elder.
Wow.
So
that's something where I've been grateful is I've grown up a lot of time in this church, and I haven't seen a lot of that. I've seen people hurt by that, and I've seen people hold to views. But when I was in primary school, we had a female minister here, in Julie Davis. We've had female elder, females on the board, still females running Sunday school as well when I was growing up. But it's not something that I've witnessed change much because we've had a good, healthy culture of it. So I'm grateful to be growing up in that era.
The Bible to me is pretty clear that it talks about in Acts that God will pour His Spirit out onto sons and daughters. The Bible is very clear about there is neither male nor female, but we are all one in Christ Jesus. That women aren't second rate. Women aren't given a lesser outpouring of the Holy Spirit, but women are gifted. Women are called. And I look at some of our key ladies. Where would we be as a church if we didn't have Ruth Jackson as an elder?
Oh, that's it.
Where would we be if we didn't have the likes of Diane Morell preaching and sharing and leading in communion? Where would we be without our wives?
We would be.
Elise particularly is very actively involved in different areas of ministry. We would be losing so much of a blessing if our women were sort of put back into that box and not allowed to be involved.
Right. N.T. Wright, famous theologian, actually changed his view on women in ministry in this last couple of years because of, could talk about for a while, it's because of the end of Romans and how, is it Deborah that it talks about? Someone like that. Yeah, we'd have to go over it. But yeah, he's actually changed his whole view because the letter would have been presented by a woman first because of the way that he sent the letter out and who it said at the very end. So something I have to study up just to remember the name off the top of my head. But well, one of the changes I've seen, it is Beyond Sunday, I'm calling it. But when I first grew up, everything at church happened on Sunday. It was all about Sunday, maybe Friday if it was youth group, but it was all about what happened on the Sunday. So like Sunday was a huge day, and it was where the whole church centered everything, and all its energy was about Sunday. Like, it was all about what happened that day. It was about if you're saved that day. It was about when people went that day. Like, if you just went to something not on Sunday, well, you weren't a Christian because you had to go on Sunday. But as I've grown up, small groups have just grown, like that culture of small groups through heaps of churches, kids clubs, youth groups, all of that sort of stuff. Like, our church was very unique for a long time, and probably still is, and it had a kids club not on Sunday. Their children's church or Sunday school wasn't Sunday. But we see that a lot more now, and you don't have to come to church on a Sunday to be a Christian, where there's a lot of churches now doing radical stuff like having a Wednesday night service or a Saturday night service, and it's crazy, but it's I think it's a really exciting change because it just doesn't contain Jesus to one day of the week.
It's almost like for a long time you could do your Sunday service, but then almost forget about church for the whole rest of the week until the following Sunday.
Definitely.
And that's not a relationship with Christ.
No.
That's a religion. That's religious sort of obedience.
That's it.
I remember a number of years ago going to the Edge Conference, and Danny Guglielmucci was the senior pastor. He actually wrote a book called Monday Church, really speaking about that it's not about the Sunday, but it's about what we may be equipped on the Sunday, encouraged on the Sunday through our worship and our fellowship, but then it's got to become real with, like, the old saying or the old cliche of where the rubber hits the road. There's got to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where we're living out our Christian faith.
That's it. So important. It was even at a point where it was just Sunday morning even too, wasn't it? Like, just to stretch out from there. But yeah, I've loved that. It's been a good change, good healthy change. It's not just Sunday anymore.
That's right. Good stuff. Well, another change that I've seen, and this one really excites me, and we're seeing it more and more, and it's continuing to grow, as probably all these ones are, but a stronger emphasis on grace rather than church rules. Rules and regulations seem to dictate everything that we did as a church, but now it's a far more loving and graceful way that we treat people, that we approach different people. We embrace and draw people in that are from completely different backgrounds. It's not about having to have this defined rule. Over the years, I've seen things such as divorced people who would not be allowed to participate in ministry. A guy I know quite well, he was divorced, and when they were found out, he wasn't allowed to do the Bible readings at church anymore. That was his ministry he loved doing, but no, you're divorced, you can't read the Bible. When I was a young leader at my church in Ballarat, we had a fantastic young couple come along as youth leaders, and brilliant youth leaders. All the kids loved them, they were enthusiastic about it and all that, and then someone found out they weren't baptised, and so they were told to stand down from leadership because they hadn't been baptised.
That's crazy.
Things like that. Probably one of the saddest stories, I won't say who it was because I don't want to embarrass them, but I got told a story about one of our older ladies. She grew up very, very poor, and she was brought along to a local church, not this one, but she was brought along to a local church as a child. And when she was sent home with a note to her mother saying that she could not attend services unless she wore a scarf, like a head covering.
Yeah, right.
So she continued to go back to the church, but her mum used to pin a paper bag to her hair just so she would have a head covering.
Yeah, wow.
And I thought, where is the love and the grace in any of that kind of attitude? I remember hearing that story. It moved me to anger, really, really angry that a church would treat someone in poverty in such a horrible, horrible way here in the local scene. So where I'm getting, it's not about sweeping sin under the carpet. It's not about just condoning sin and all that kind of stuff, but it really is that extended grace and love for one another.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. Growing up in the era I've grown up, I'm surprised that it was so legalistic and stuff like that, but it was obviously. So.
It's been horrendous. I remember seeing minutes from a church when I was in Wollongong. I did a research assignment on the history of the church. I was reading through all these minutes, and there was a story that I came across where one of the members of the church was seen by another member of the church behind his shop in the alleyway smoking a cigar. So that person was removed from communion for 4 Sundays.
Oh, wow.
Because
that's
he was
crazy.
Smoking.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
the world we live in, it just puts the church further back a step away from the world, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it reinforces that attitude of the church. They're just judgy and hypocrites
exactly.
and stuff.
You see where that came from when you hear stories like that. What sort of leads in a little bit, but style is one of the biggest things I've seen change a lot for me. Like style, I feel like just the way that church is, what you see. I remember growing up as a kid, and it was a very set style. You'd have a song, you'd have children's talk, then you'd have maybe another couple of songs, you'd have communion, you'd have a song, you'd have a message. But you could go to most churches when you're visiting somewhere else and you get the same basic recipe. You know exactly what you're coming up with. You knew the same genre of music as well, I'd say. And we touched on a lot of this stuff just recently when we talked about worship. But, so I won't go too much into it. But just the style and freedom, like some churches you can go to now might do one song at the start. Some churches might not do songs. We went to a church when we were away and we sat down around tables, which we've done before here. But that was quite different. Just the way it's not limited to just that very song, sermon, this. And we still do that a lot, in a way, but just the way that we can do it. The genre of music's very different now. You go to different churches and you hear such a variety. The way they preach as well, style of preaching, which we also talked about a couple of weeks ago. But I'd just say style as a whole has changed so much in a good way as well, I think.
And there's been a graceful attitude about style. You know, I've been here 20 years as a minister, and those first few years, regular complaint would be not enough hymns. We should do more hymns. Why didn't we do a hymn? Now, it's been a long time since I've heard a complaint about no hymns. And I think it's not because we do or don't do hymns, but it's more that people have an understanding that the emerging generations, the young families that are filling our morning services particularly, you know, hymns isn't where they're at. They want them more contemporary. So people are happier to have the contemporary for the sake of seeing so many people coming and being a part of the church.
That's it.
You know, I'd much rather be a church that, you know, like our 10:30 service hitting on around 170, 180 people. I'd much rather that and no hymns than 4 hymns and 25 people.
That's right. And you see more of that conversational style of talking or presenting comes up a lot. And once upon a time, people would have hated that if it wasn't formal. And I've never wore a tie to preach. I don't know if I would have survived back in the day.
I should tell you a funny story with that. When I was in Hobart, it was shirt and tie in the morning service. So every time I preached in the morning service, shirt and tie. Evening service was more of a youth-flavoured service, so we didn't. But when I came here, so 20 years ago, I had the same kind of mentality. So first service that I preached, I had my suit jacket, had my tie, had my shirt. And Ian Mansell, who for many years was an elder at this church, a much loved man of the church, he came up to me and he said, "Andrew, you'll soon learn that you don't have to wear that monkey suit here." Never wore a suit when I preached again.
That's fantastic, isn't it? I'm very grateful for that.
Last one I wanted to share about was,
excellent.
And
what
this
else
one
have
really
you got?
excites me, and that is the involvement of young people. I love when I'm watching our online services, and the last couple of weeks where we've had young people in the bands. I love it when I've seen, you know, when we're back at normal, you know, looking across our band and seeing teenagers and that in the service. For a long time, there was almost like this unwritten rule, and I found that out early on. There was an unwritten rule that you had to be 16 or over to be involved in an area of ministry in the church. And I asked about it, was that a hard and fast rule the elders had made? They said, "Oh no, it's just like this unwritten rule." And there was a young girl at the time who was playing flute in the band, and the question had come up through other people that, she shouldn't be playing.
Wow,
She's
that's
only
crazy.
Like 13 or whatever she was at the time. And what we would miss out on when we see our young people.
We'd be stuffed nowadays if our band was just over 18s, really.
Yeah.
Like,
But even like helpers at Adventure Club, so many of our young teens do an incredible job helping out at Adventure Club, helping out at Adventure Sunday, as I said already, our worship. Some of our key tech guys, you know, they're young teenagers, they're doing an amazing job. You know, I really felt growing up in the church that we were sort of told that when you're a kid, you're too young, you don't know enough, you're too immature, you're too silly or whatever. So it was all about the adults, and again, like I said earlier, the men. They were the ones that ran everything, they're the ones that organised everything, they're the ones that did everything. And so church kind of became a bit of a relevant sort of thing, because you didn't belong, there was nothing for you to do. So to see our young people express their gifts, express their talents, express their own personalities through all of that, I think it's made us a richer church.
Oh, definitely.
And it helps our young people feel enthusiastic, that they belong, they have a place in this church.
A bit of ownership.
Yeah.
No, I bit like your woman one, that's something I never experienced, fortunately.
Yeah.
And I was able to be involved as a young person. That helped make me interested as ministry as a 18, 19-year-old as a career path. So,
Well, to me, one of the key verses, and this is up in our Adventure Sunday room. If you've never seen the great big wall decal that we've got up there, you need to check it out when we can be back on site again. But 1 Timothy 4 verse 12, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. When I read that verse, I really see what it's saying, that our young people, is that they are gifted, they are talented, they have a place in this church, they can minister in this church, they can be a witness in this church, and I'm so glad that we do. And sometimes they make mistakes. They may not do it as good as someone who's a little bit older, one of the guitarists. They might not do it as good as Isaac plays the guitar, or they may not speak as good as us professional preachers and all that kind of stuff, but gee, we'd miss out on a real lot without that enthusiasm, without their joy, without their passion.
That's right.
So I'm very happy
Huge
about
difference.
that one.
My last one is just probably in pastors' gifting. I'll probably talk about it. But you see, back in the day, or when I was growing up, even at the start of Bible college, pastors were expected to be good at preaching, pastoral care. It helped if they were a musician as well, something where I always fell short. They need to be good at so many different things, though. Teaching, at leadership, at team designating, at admin, just a long list. Now you're seeing more churches particularly hire specific pastors for things, or they're not expecting, they're expecting their pastors to be part of a team, not just the team, which is really exciting, I think. So you used to always just see a pastor and then they'd get a youth pastor. That was the natural thing. So you got a pastor for the young people, pastor for the people that weren't young. Well, now you're seeing churches do stuff like we're seeing media pastors are becoming quite a popular thing, or they're just hiring. I saw video editors are being hired by a couple of the bigger churches at the moment. Surprise, surprise. But worship pastors wasn't really a thing 15, 20 years ago, or it was just the really big churches that had worship pastors. You're seeing pastors hired that are just hired for pastoral care even, and they're not required to preach. So maybe someone that isn't a good public speaker could be a phenomenal pastor. Back in the day,
how many people who, because they don't feel that they could preach, just thought, well, I could never be in ministry. Which
you see so many great people that are incredibly gifted at pastoral care that could be a great pastor if they didn't have to preach. But churches wanted a preaching pastor, and I think that's still a little bit of that there, but I think that's changing rapidly at the moment. It's something we'll see more and more of.
And it sort of excites about the flexibility then, what we're doing. We complement each other very well in what we do, but we've been able to have Josh Tonkin on a day a week looking after the children. We've got a Dal Beasy doing an internship and growing in children's ministry, but also taking on more with a worship role within the church. We've got Noel and Kay Underwood who are doing our seniors pastoral care. So we've been able to employ and place people according to gifts.
That's right.
And very different gifts to make sure that different areas of the church are being ministered to effectively.
Well, back in the day, they just look at full-time and broad range sort of thing, and it's good change.
Yeah, excellent.
But
There's a lot of change,
That's it. There's a lot, and we could keep going with some, I'm sure. But what do you think have changed? What's changed in your experience? And it'd be great to see, because it depends, again, on your age. It depends on your background, what churches you've been to. So we'd love to know, what changes have you seen?
Yeah, so whether you've been in this church for a little while, or whether you're one of those members that have been here for 50, 60, 70 years or more.
That's right.
We'd love to hear those
That's
things.
it. What do you wish there was more of now? What's something you wish hadn't changed, perhaps? Do you want more puppets at church on a Sunday? I don't know.
Don't answer that
That's it. But thanks for coming along to our Pastors Chat, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. See you later, everyone.